my last two R5 Mark II tips videos, we looked at how to move the autofocus point and what the different AF areas did and what they were good for. This time we're going to look at all the ways that you can use to change your autofocus area. Now that said, if you're a longtime Canon user, you might be tempted right now to just hit the back button and skip the rest of this video. After all, you've probably been doing this stuff for years and you probably know this. However, if like me, you haven't looked at the options in forever, which, I mean, why would you? You might be missing out on some options that are new to Canon's mirrorless cameras. There's a couple of them that I think might be useful for many people, especially those like me who want more buttons for things that they use all the time instead of having to have a button for the autofocus thing. Now, with that said, the usual disclaimer applies here. Canon's software and user interface evolve and change with every generation and camera. Moreover, different tier cameras have different capabilities, different performance, and different options. In the broad strokes, the features I'm covering in this video are present in Canon's other EOS R series mirrorless cameras in one shape or form. However, the demos you're going to see, the testing that I've done in this video, and everything else specific around this video were done with an EOS R5 Mark II. This means that if you are using another Canon model, the exact details, performance, and especially menu locations that I talk about may very well be different. As always, consult your camera's manual for the exact details for those other models. Of course, now you know what the term is, you might find it a little easier to look it up. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's look at how we change the autofocus areas on the Mark II. Now, the first option we have is also actually the most old school way of doing this. That is using the AF point selection menu. And in fact, on Canon DSLRs, this was the only way to change the phase AF points for a long time. In fact, I think it might have been all the way up to the end. By default, the AF point selection menu is brought up by pressing the AF point selection button. That's this one here on the far right backside of the camera. Now, in the AF point selection menu, by default, the MFN button will cycle through the AF areas one at a time in turn. Alternatively, if you're using the LCD, you can also use the touch system to touch the virtual button that corresponds to the AF area you want to select. Now, pressing the MFN button repeatedly is not what I would call the fastest way to get through the AF areas, especially since on the R5 Mark II, we now have 12 to step through. For faster and potentially more important bidirectional control of moving through the list, you can configure the camera to use the main command dial here instead. Though this, of course, does mean that you can't use that dial to move the autofocus point up and down in this menu. On the R5 Mark II, the option to do this is found on page 2 of the green Control Customization menu section under AF Area Selection Control. Now, speaking of using buttons to change the AF area, there is another button function that you might want to consider, especially if you don't use the AF point selection menu to actually move the AF point. The button function that I'm talking about is the Direct AF Area Selection function. And setting a button to this and pressing that button will step through the AF areas basically the same way the MFN button does by default in the AF point selection screen. Only, of course, this time you don't have to hit the AF point selection button to go there, you just step through AF areas. Now, since this is a custom button function, to set this up, head over to the Customize Buttons for Shooting menu on page 1 of the green Control Customization menu. From there, pick the button you want to use, probably the AF point selection one, and then press Set or tap the button to enter that button's function selection menu. There you're looking for this icon, which should be on the second row at the very top of the list. Now, the next approach is to use the camera's menus. The AF area setting is at the top of the first page of the purple AF menu, labeled, obviously, AF area. Now, of all of the options that we will talk about in this video, this one is the most limited, since you can only change the AF area and nothing else. All the other functions that you would have in the other methods are in other menus elsewhere. Option number 4 is to use the quick control menus. Now, this applies to both the live view quick control menu as well as what I call the number 5 info screen. That's this one with the settings and no live image on it. Though the capabilities that you will have, whether or through that, will be different depending on which of those menus you go through or which of those places you start from. In the default live view quick control menu, the AF area is going to be the topmost entry on the left column. Selecting it will allow you to do everything you could within the, at least with AF areas, as you could in the AF point selection menu. So to access the quick control menu, if you're not familiar with it, you press either the physical or virtual quick control buttons. The physical one is this one here. Obviously, the virtual one is the one you see in the upper left or upper right corner of the LCD. Then you navigate to navigate the quick control menu, use either the quick control dial on the camera's back, up or down on the multi-controller, or just touch the virtual button for the setting you want to change. Now, once you've selected the function and it's highlighted in yellow, to change it, you can use either the main command dial or the second quick control dial. That's the one on the top of the camera. Left or right on the multi-controller, or touch the virtual button for the setting that you want to change it to, which will be in a list at the bottom of the screen. Now, the other quick control menu that I mentioned comes from the number 5 info screen. Again, it's this one here. To switch to this, if you aren't familiar, simply press the info button on the back of your camera until it's displayed, and then to go back to live view, hit info a few more times. Now, on this menu, you're looking for the leftmost element on the bottom row. The icon will actually be the icon for the AF area you currently have selected. Now, like the live quick control menu, you press either the physical or virtual quick control menu buttons to bring up this menu and allow you to access the settings. You can then use touch or the multi-controller to highlight or select the setting you want with the yellow cursor box around it. Once selected, you can use any of the dials on the camera body to scroll through the AF areas. Alternatively, you can press set or tap the virtual button and the camera will display a menu that allows you to change the AF area. Now, yet another option for changing the autofocus area is to use the camera's dials directly. You can program either the lens's control ring or either of the quick control dials to do this. Changing the dial function is, of course, done through the Customize Dials / Control Ring menu found on the first page of the green Control Customization menu section. Now, when you're there, select the ring you want to change and then look for the Select AF Area option. Note, if you assign this function to the lens's control ring, there will be 2 versions, one that works all the time and one that's only active when you're holding the metering button. The metering button on the R5 or really any of Canon's cameras amounts to either half pressing the shutter release, pressing the AF on button, or pressing the AE lock button. Any of those will trigger the metering system to start. Now, this brings me finally to the dial function menu, and this is the one that comes up when you press the MFN button on the camera by default. Now, while this feature isn't new to the Mark II, it was actually on the R5. I completely missed it there, and for me, this one is a big one. The reality is I don't change autofocus areas that often, and I almost never need to do it quickly, at least so quickly that having a button on the camera that does it is really useful. In fact, that button has always felt to me to be a little bit of a waste, that there's other things that I could program it to that I want to toggle much more quickly. Now, setting up this in the dial function menu does require customizing the dial's function menu's contents, and the process to do that does require a little bit of digging. First of all, we need to go to the Customize Buttons for Shooting menu on, again, page 1 of the green Control Customization menu. Then we need to find the MFN button in the list and select it to enter its function customization page. Now, since the MFN button is already the dial function button, when you enter its customization page, the dial function option will be selected by default. So at this point, we can just press Info to edit the dial function menu. Now that we're in the dial function menu editor, select the position where you want the AF area to be and then press Set. Then choose AF area from the list of available functions. When that's done, hit OK, step out of the menu, make sure you've saved everything, and you will now have the AF area in the dial function menu. Now that said, if you use flexible zones, this is a change you might not want to make. You can't change the AF area or customize the zone area in the dial function menu. Now, before I wrap this up, there is one final tip that I want to hit on that I think is super useful. Several of the approaches, in fact all of them one way or another, rely on cycling through each of the AF areas in turn. Now with 12 different AF areas on the Mark II, this can be tedious and slow. Moreover, you may find that you just don't use or need all of those AF areas. For instance, with 3 fully customizable flexible zone areas, you may only need 1 or 2 normally, and the rest are are extra things to step through. To that end, Canon has provided a way to disable some of the AF areas. When this is done, they're hidden from some of the menus, anything that's an overlay, and everywhere they are marked as unselectable, and the camera will just skip over them as you scroll through the options. The setting you're looking for to do this is called Limit AF Areas, and it's found on the top of page 5 of the pink AF menu section. In that menu, remove the checkboxes from any, or the checks, I should say, in the checkboxes for any of the AF areas you don't need to hide them from the selection process. Now, once you've unchecked the areas you don't want, make sure you press the OK button to save your changes and return to the upper level menu. Pressing any of the other buttons, the menu button, cancel, or anything that will take you directly back to shooting, such as pressing the shutter release or pressing the AF on button, will revert any changes you made to what they were prior to opening the menu. Now, the disabled areas will be grayed out in camera menus that don't involve a live overlay and will be hidden completely in any of the menus that come up over the live screen. Now, on one hand, Canon has given us a lot of options for changing the AF area, especially compared to what they had on their DSLRs not all that long ago. And I have to say, I like flexibility in general, but there is a part of me where this almost feels like too many ways to do it. And it's maybe not the too many ways that makes this a little frustrating. It's the level of inconsistency between what you get in each of these places. For example, if you use the AF point selection menu to customize your AF area, zone AF areas, or flexible zone AF areas, you press the rate button to change that AF area to enter the customization for that. But if you're going in the quick control menu, you press set there. In any event, there is some more to come on the R5 Mark II's autofocus system in the next couple of videos. Specifically, I want to dig into the whole AF area or whole area AF tracking option for the single, spot, and expanded areas, and talk a little bit or look at a little bit about how the flexible zones interact with subject detection and tracking and what they control and limit. So if that sounds like something you might be interested, hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you know when those videos get published. That said, I hope you found this useful or at least interesting. If you did, let me know by hitting that like button. Also, if this kind of thing seems like it might be your kind of thing, please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Finally, if you'd like to help and support this channel, you can help us for free by liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and leaving a comment with your experiences. Likewise, you can support us by hitting that thanks button or buying yourself something you've always wanted from one of the affiliate links in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.